And so for tonight's presentation, we have Ernie Conover. Ernie's coming to us remotely and has agreed to provide tonight's demonstration. So thank you so much, Ernie. I'm going to pass it off to you.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you. I actually, from the coffee hour, I'm now a bona fide member of the Lancaster Club. So this is sort of be like attending the meeting and a really long show and tell, I guess. I thought I'd talk a little bit about spindle turning. And when I teach a class these days, if I didn't cover bowl turning, nobody'd come. But I really like spindle turning. I always refer to myself as a furniture maker, really, with a wood turning problem. And I always try to incorporate some spindles to any piece of furniture I make, if nothing more than a knob. I one time turned 40 knobs for a kitchen I built. I'm doing that over again for my wife these days. So it's kind of fun, and it puts a little bit of uniqueness. And actually, you can't buy any kind of a decent well knob, at least one my wife would accept, from the various stores for less than $5 to $10 a knob. So you could actually save quite a bit of money because you can make them mostly with scraps. So I'd like to talk a little bit about spindle turning here, and let's just walk through the spindle tools first and sort of my thoughts on how you should grind them. I've covered grinding of spindle tools in other lectures and other videos. And, you know, we could always revisit that one in another club meeting too. But you have three classes of turning tools for spindle turning. And that is the chisels. And the chisels are the skew chisels. And I've come to really like these Ore Mountain skews that Crown is making now. They're a wasted skew chisel that it narrows down. And they were used by the Ore Mountain turners that were on the border of Germany and Czechoslovakia and turned all your Christmas toys like pyramid meters that go around with candles and nutcrackers and Santas and little Christmas trees. And I've got this one as a sample from Edward Gandy at Crown, and I started using it, and I just love the thing. I actually have all three sizes they make now. I use them all at various times. They come with a fairly long bevel, but it is important with a skew chisel that it have a fairly much flat bevel and not be hollow ground. Yeah, you can use them hollow ground, and I see people doing it every day, but most, especially beginners, will do a little better with it being flat or even a little bit convex after you start sharpening it on stones for a while. And that is that when you present it, and we'll do this, and I'll show you when we're showing skew action here in a few minutes, but that causes bevel, but the bevel contacts the work really on a line that would be where the corner of that billet is. It'd be right up through there, and it'd be contacting it back here. And if you have a hollow grind, there's no bevel contact between the edge and the heel of the bevel. So it's sort of trying to auger in all the time. By going to a flat bevel, it's much better supported, and it's easier to feel that bevel.
Excuse me, Ernie, do you have a camera that's showing differently than this straight on camera that we're seeing in our view?
I'm sorry, I should have switched. There we go.
There you go. Sorry, thank you.
And there you can see it, and bevel contact would be from here to right under here along that corner.
Your view just disappeared completely, Ernie.
Yeah, I have to wait the camera. There. But at any rate, that's what keeps it, it makes it less catchy. So that's, and I'm not alone in that. Frank Payne says that very clearly in his book of 1958 or 9. Another chisel is the beading and parting tool. And that's a double bevel tool like the skew. And the skews and the beading and parting tools are unlike other kinds of chisels and other trades in that they are double beveled. And you really need to grind all of these a lot longer than most manufacturers deliver in that. I like them to be really long. And Payne in his book of the 50s says 47 degrees, which I find to be too thick. It doesn't cut as cleanly. Mike Darlow and I both like them like ice picks. And so as your skill increases, don't be afraid to lengthen that bevel a little. And another member of the chisels are the parting tools, which you can hollow grind these because they're pretty much only presented like this at right angles to the work. I like the diamond pattern like this that actually has a diamond profile. It's round for clearance, and that means that only this little edge is dragging in the curve, and they don't create the heat and friction that a square section tool does. Unfortunately, nobody makes one that's thin anymore, and I don't know why. I have to bitch to Ed Gandy the next time I talk to him, but if you look around, you can find these Craftsman high-speed steel tools, and they're actually made at M2. They were sold all through the 70s and 80s, and I see them at yard sales, and I always buy these tools because they're fairly good steel, and they're little parting tools, just a dandy. I use this one all the time. You then go to the gouges, and I like a roughing out gouge. Right now, I'm using the Carter & Son one, which is a terrific gouge. It's very heavy. I'm not sure I really like their very heavy aluminum handle. I may make one out of wood just to try it. For years, I've used one P&T in Australia, and I made my own handle for this one. But this is a very similar size gouge. And it's always been a favorite. I use it all the time, but I've been trying this Carter & Son, and this has M42 steel in it, which I find to be better than M2. It's really my favorite steel these days. But you can see how long I grind these. I grind them down to about a 25 degree inclusive edge. And I want them to just hone metal, hone wood. And if you grind them along like that, you can actually get a finish that's about as good as the skew. And if it's in curly wood or something, you won't have any of the tear out you get with a skew. You go into the spindle gouges, and of course they go from small to large. I use this one a fair amount if that's a 1/4 inch gouge. That's made from M42. This is Henry Taylor's new M42 line. It's got flashier dressing on it. This is a D-Wade spindle gouge. This is a 1/2 inch spindle gouge. It's really more like a detail gouge. And the detail gouge has a bit of a shallower flute than a true spindle gouge. And that allows you to grind a longer angle and get more sweep to the fingernail. And I like this gouge, and I like the handle. It feels very good. And you can remove it to sharpen the tool is a nice feature. And these are two new tools from Crown that are much like tools that I used when I was a boy that came from Sorby and so on. And I find this one really nice for architectural work because it's nicer for sweeping bigger coves than a 1/2 inch gouge. And then you have the scrapers. For spindle turning, I mostly just use these V scrapers. And I do everything from undercutting an edge, getting a square shoulder, you name it. And I grind them this way and that with different angles in them with the needs of the job. Scrapers are what I call an ephemeral tool, and you use them up and grind them up and buy new ones. They're what accountants in a machine tool business used to call perishable tooling. Let's look a little bit at some tools that'll help you duplicate one thing to another. I am very bullish on dividers, so you can't really have too many pairs of dividers. I mostly have bought them at flea markets over the years, and you can still find them in there. You can find them on eBay too. But having them different sizes and different manufacturers is actually helpful, because if you've got a whole series of things you're laying out, you could use a different pair and graduate them from bigger gaps that you're measuring to smaller ones, and you don't mix them up as bad. The same goes for calipers. And again, I find these old tools that were made mostly in Massachusetts and Connecticut originally, people like Starrett and Miller Falls and Lufkin. Sometimes for metalworking, they'll have a very sharp edge here, and you shouldn't use them as you find them. But you can usually take one of those pairs of dividers and grind it off in a grinder to a rounded edge right here and make it safe to use. But here you can see I have 3 different sizes, and these two have gone and signed these together. But there's 3 different sizes, and if you have 3 different things you're measuring, it's easy to keep track of them. And I have much larger pairs too. Let's now take a look at just some simple things to do in spindle turning that will get the job done. One of the most basic things in turning any architectural spindles is that you often, for one reason or other, leave part of it square. On a leg, that would be the top of the leg, often referred to as the pommel. And below that is often the turn, everything is turned. Once in a while, you get a leg with another square spot right near the floor, and often that is mortise then to put stretchers between the legs to give a table more stability. Double-sided square areas are also very common in newel posts. I use a skew chisel to go from square to round, and you really only have to put a line on one side. I've put a black line here at this point, which I just picked arbitrarily. And I'm going to now take this left-hand bevel as I put the toe down, and I'm going to make that square to the work like that. So the skew is really sticking off in this direction. And I'm going to come in and just tease a little out there. And then I'm going to move to the right and cut a little bit out. And then I'm going to go back and cut a little more, come back and clean out. And it's like chopping with an axe, but you're only chopping from one side. You're chopping down and then to the side. And always with the bevel on the primary cut here, square to the work. Let's start this up here.
Can we change the view on that, Ernie, so we can see it from the across?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Can I change the view on that so that we can see it from the front as you're?
I probably can. Oh, you want to see it from the front? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
As you were cutting it, there you go.
Yeah. So I will be cutting like this, and then I'll be cutting in like that, and then this and that. And I will give you picture in picture now. I'll switch to this and there you have the other view down in the left-hand corner, I think.
Yes.
All
Got
right.
it.
So lining this up square, I'm going to touch right there. Touch the second time. That is more material out. And you can see that I've got it pretty square. It's got a little bit of a scallop in it. I forgot to turn on my video light. Let me turn my video light on. Darkness is falling earlier these days.
While Ernie's turning that on, folks, if you have a question, if you wouldn't mind just putting the hand raise on your Zoom, raise hand, and I'll try and track it along so that you can interrupt and ask Ernie for questions.
There. That's a Festool work light on a tripod that I just turned on. It really throws some light. But there, you can probably see it a little better now. Now, I haven't quite brought it all the way in. I'm going to do that now. And our next job would be just to round this off all the way from that shoulder. And you can do this with a spindle gouge, and I'll show you some cuts if you have to. For like pen turners, a spindle gouge is actually fine for roughing out a blank. But for big spindles, this tool really helps an awful lot. Now, just for reference, I'm running about 1,000 RPM. I'm running 868. I'm not turning terribly fast, but by rolling that gouge, you can come in right in here. Like that. Now we're not come round yet. So at this point, I generally will put my thumb on top of the tool to block the chips, put my fingers back here to feel when I go out. There. And you can see we've got one continuous slight flat spot on here, which means that we've got a very accurate cylinder. And this brings up another fact that by every turning has a major diameter. And let's say this is about 1.5 inches or 1.75 inches. And so you mill all your blanks for these turnings to that size. I usually mill them to about 1/16 over what I want for the major diameter. And if you then just use your hand to bring this just round, no more, no less, you really don't have to take any measurements for the greatest diameters parts of the turning. It's sort of done for you. So cutting this accurately in a table saw.
We've lost your video, Ernie.
This camera times out every things. I've actually put it on don't sleep, but it doesn't seem to want to do that. But at any rate, that is sort of a trick for getting a consistent major diameter in all your turbines. You usually also don't want to leave these corners square. I've seen very few pieces of furniture where you leave a square hard corner like that. You usually want to round that. And that's pretty easy to do. You just take a square, and usually I take a ruler then and go a set distance somewhere between 1/4 and 3/8 on most furniture turbines. On newel posts, it can be a lot farther. It can be a 1/2 inch or even 5/8. But that's a second line I've drawn right here. And I'm now going to roll a 1/2 bead. I haven't shown you how to roll a bead yet, but that will be my next task here. And I will now just come in and touch right down on that spot, rolling a bead mostly on air. I'm going to put right down in right there. And you see how much better, to see how we started pretty much right at that corner. And we've got a shiny polish to that, so everything is good. We can also now take some planing cuts with our skew just to show how that operates. And to use this tool, we're going to set it down, and a skew always walks backwards. This is the heel of the skew, the short corner, and this is the toe. And you always advance it heel first, so it walks backwards. If we're going the other way, we would go like this. Also, the squarer you can keep it to the work, the less tear out you will get in reverse frame situations. So to use it, we're going to set it down like this, bring it down so it starts to cut, and kind of roll it like that. So it's cutting in an area that's about 1/2 the working edge, or not the working edge, the cutting edge. So it's going to be an area about like that, from about here to about there. If you try to do more than that, it usually gets away from you. Again, Frank Payne said, I know you bought all of it, but you can only use 1/2 of it. He was quite aware. I can hear the flat spots going by. Now, something that's worth noting, most people will try to do this like this. And you want to keep the same angle and slide it on the tool rest. Chatter there, I can get rid of that by putting my hand back. Take the tail stock just a little, I'll get rid of some of that. Now you use your crossed hands technique like this. My wrist is on it. I cannot lock and chick this cut, but it sure works. Now, as I come up to the end here, I have to slide the bevel forwards and cut with a very heel of the tool, and I can cut right up to the shoulder. And that heel cut is the best cut for getting through really difficult grading. But you can see that the wood is fairly polished at this point, and that you could probably start sanding on this piece of Spanish cedar about 180 or 220 and be just fine. Questions?
Anybody?
My other camera went dead.
So If you have any questions, folks, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Hey Doug,
Ernie, do you use the same tool rest height relative to the spindle center for all your spindle work?
Uh, The answer is sort of yes and no. There, does that camera come back now?
yes,
All right. The answer is that you work with a higher spindle height or tool rest height in spindle turning than you do in faceplate. In faceplate, you usually got the rest a little below center, so the very center of the tool, the bowl gouge specifically, is right on center when the tool is level on the rest. With spindle turning, we're usually trying to cut right in an area between our eyeballs and the center of the piece. And so this generally takes a higher rest position. I'm considerably above the center line of the lathe, as you can see right there. And it usually works out if you took an absolutely level view from the center line like that, that it would be at about 2/3 the height of the rest of the work. And the caveat being a very tall man is going to work with a higher rest than a very short man, because you're trying to get the cut to happen between you and the center of the lathe, your eyeball in the center of the lathe. And often for a lot of skew work on like a really long column, I will raise the rest a bit, just because getting that cut right up here, right there where I can see it and see what's happening, is useful. There, I got rid of it. So that's the take on rest height.
Mike, you had a
Also-
question? Mike Junkert had a question.
is he, I'm assuming he's got a step center there holding,
Yes, I use Stebs almost exclusively. I like that tool so much that I bought all 3 sizes, 2 sets at complete full retail. So that's a hell of an endorsement. I usually get somebody to give me a discount.
well, I like your combining your one-way tool rest with your Powermatic. That's kind of a,
Yeah, when we read, this is a V model, and I helped Barry Schwager and redesign this. Rudy Selnick did the A model, who was a mentor of mine. And he taught me a tremendous amount. And but at any rate, we sort of ran out of money when we got to the tool rest. We've clipped the corner, we've done all kinds of things to it. Barry had the great idea of moving the hole down up towards the front of the tailstock right here, so you could hang it a long way off the bed. Great idea. But we ran out of money. So one way, we'll build a rest custom for almost any big lathe. And it was about $350 for this, but man, was it money well spent. They make the best tool rest and banjo of anybody. You can just take this and take it and push it down with your thumb, and you cannot move this. You can take this like that. You cannot move it. And it's very easy to lock and unlock. These are features, I think, especially if you do a lot of moving the tool rest, which in spindle turning you do a lot of moving the tool rest in faceplate work. So it's something you're grabbing one of those 2 handles all the time. And if you got a reef on to keep it from slipping, or it slips once in a while and you ruin the work, that's not a good situation.
excellent, thank you.
Let's look at cutting coves and beads now. And I guess I'll start by saying you can't cut a cove that's smaller than the chisel. In almost every class, I have somebody that tries to do that, but you can't do it. But I think for a beginner, you're good to make a couple of lines to try to hold your cove between those two lines. And to cut a cove, you got both cameras running. Okay, everything's good. You can see reasonably good. I might try moving this right-hand camera a little to my left to hone in this, that a nicer, starting to be a nicer angle.
Yes.
And I'm going to refocus the camera. It'll take a second. There, I think that's a better view.
Indeed.
You're kind of looking over my right shoulder now. So to cut this, I'm going to put the gouge down like this and go to the center and just rock it down so it cuts. Cut in a place like that. But now I'm going to pick it up, rotate it slightly counterclockwise, touch down, and rotate it level again as I swing it in. I'll go to the other side and do that. You notice my bevel is always rubbing. And I'm going to now split that pencil line. I also am always stopping at the very bottom. I'm coming down this side and then this side and not going back up. The grain is running like this. And as long as you're going downhill on both sides, you're laying grain down. If you come back up, you're picking grain up. And disaster often ensues. But again, look at our surface finish from using the tool sharpened correctly and with the bevel rubbing. And so in slow motion, it's starting like this. And then I'm rotating it slowly till it's level right here. And then rotating it this way and coming down like that. Any questions?
Just a quick question, Ernie. Somebody was asking about what type of eye protection you're using at the moment.
I'm sorry?
We've had a question about the eye protection that you're using at the moment.
I'm using a pair of Z87 safety glasses with side shields.
Thank you.
I will use a face shield, one I think is appropriate. Various kinds of face plate work mostly. Anytime when I think that a big piece could come out and hit me, but to be honest, with spindles, generally they're going to hit the tool roast and go that way if they do come out of the lathe. And they come out of the lathe mostly because people run the lathe too darn fast. You don't see me turning terribly fast here. It's sharp tools correctly applied. Also, I take various steps to give myself further protection. You notice that I almost always have a finger in the chip string that makes the chips go down instead of up in my face. And my wife likes that when I come in for lunch or dinner or the night or whatever, that I'm not bringing nearly as many chips in my pockets and stuff. The second thing you need to know how to cut is a bead, and that's the opposite of a code. And so let's make a bead about that size. Generally make yourself a half, 3/4 inch bead. And you start this with a skew chisel like this. And here, I'm putting the chisel in dead square, and I'm going to either side of the first cut alternately. I'm going to the right now, and now I'll go to the left of the original cut. And I've now created 2 little grooves. And I can take my spindle gouge and put it down like this and get it cutting, and now raise the handle like this. And now pushing forward, I'm going to bring the handle towards me and work right to the root of the bead. And to the other side, I put it down, I raise this handle. I'm pushing that chisel right towards the test. Pretty good looking bead. And this is a pretty common winter chair shape right here. Another half bead. The big thing is I never lose double contact on any of this stuff. And it is a sense of feel. And that's why most people can't turn right out of the gate, especially spindle turn. Two little strikes with a skew will make that bead pop a lot more. But again, you can see that there's a polished finish there.
Ernie, I'm sorry if I missed this. What kind of wood is that?
It's a piece of Spanish cedar. It's a very favorable wood to practice on. It will cut. You need sharp tools to cut it, believe it or not. You want your tools to be sharp, but if they're sharp and you rub the bevel, you get beautiful results out of it. It's used a lot in architectural work, outside architectural work these days. I turn a lot of pieces for a mill house near here, and they often have excess cutoffs for some reason or other. They give you to me for the classes. Nice practice wood for people.
And Ernie, you said you did not have that turning real fast. What speed are you using?
It's 868, a little less than 900 RPMs.
Thank you.
And it just is not necessary to have a lot of speed to spindle turn. I know Jimmy Clues turns it in insane speeds, but I don't think that's necessary nor even favorable. A skew is an ancient tool, and it was designed for spring pull lathes, and really is designed to work at low speeds. It works. A skew will work much better at 700-800 than it will above that. A common furniture style is in Empire furniture is to have a very large bead at the foot of the tree. And you can actually cut large beads with a skew chisel. And here we use it. And we're gonna cut entirely, just like that. On right down to the root. And now we come back and do this side.
Ernie, I think you're showing one of the cuts that most of us have the most difficulty with having a catch on it. And what causes the catch when we're making this rounding with a skew chisel?
Yeah, I'll show you. Here, I thought. I'll turn the lathe off and show you why it catches. I'm on the very heel of the bevel. And I'm cutting down like that. If I get the least off of that, it's going to screw thread up like that. And that mark, only very deep, and part of this missing is going to be the result.
So you're saying you overturned when you were turning the?
No, I'm cutting only with the heel of the bevel and maybe a 16th behind it. So I'm right like that. And the edge would be a tangent to that spherical shape, extending from that point backwards into space. So really, none of this is touching the work. And the only reason it catches is because you get this down to where it's not tangent all the way up and it's touching and it catches to the screw threads. And you would know in a French Empire piece, the foot would start to open. Always love to look at that foot design. This would usually be a taper, a convex taper. Looks something like this. And any questions?
Other than wow. And how many beads did you turn before you got it feeling that you said you got the feel for it? How much turning did you do before you feel you really got the feel for it, Ernie?
I think it takes about 40, 50 hours of turning to get to where you're reasonably competent. And even at that, you will have bad days. And most of us, I build furniture too, and I do other things. And so it might be 2-3 weeks between turning sessions. It might be a month or 6 weeks sometimes. And you come back, a lot of these guys that do all, I call them the trick shots of turning that are on the demonstration circuit, do all these sort of fancy cuts and everything, and they'll cut all their beads with a skew and so on. And I liken them a little bit to the guys that used to go around for the gun companies, Remington and Winchester, and shoot marbles out of the air and sell a carload of guns and move on for another point on the train. And a week afterwards, there wasn't much news in the paper that the shooting ability of the populace had changed much. And it's practice. If we got some BB guns and a wheelbarrow BBs and sat for 2 weeks outside here, just shot at little things and so on. Pretty soon we'd be doing pretty good. And that's what it takes for turkey. It just takes at least 40 hours of practice to get some of this down, and you're not nervous all the time. And a beginner has to think every time he sets that tool down, where am I putting this? What angle am I putting this? And they run into problems because they have to think so hard about everything they're doing that as they turn for an hour or so, they just get tired out and then the mistakes set in. So another scheme that I feel very strongly, you're better to turn like 2-3 times a week when you're learning for an hour to 2 hours at the most, and then just do it over and have some little, make a candlestick or a cable leg. A Windsor chair leg is a great turning exercise. And just stack them up one by one and you'll see your skills improve. Now,
Another,
wood, like poplar is very abundant around here. It's a great practice wood.
another question for you though. The chisel you chose, that German chisel, the side of that chisel is rounded as opposed to square like most skew chisels are. Does that really help your rolling effect when you're rolling a bead?
No, in fact,
You're going black on your screen.
the problem, it's probably yes, but when you roll a bead, there's a lot of square section chisels that have the heel side rounded these days to make a better roll. And always in the old days, we would tune up a skew by going over the grinder and put a heavy radius on the edges of the rectangle it's built out of to better facilitate sliding on the rest. The other thing I should mention about skew work and gouge work is just keeping a piece of paraffin here and occasionally paraffin.
You're black. Your screen's black again.
Putting some paraffin on the tool rest so that your chisel slides better on that rest. You can even put it on the tool if you want. So I always have a block of paraffin up here to do that with. Also, draw filing your wrist now and then to get all the marks and stuff out of it is good maintenance. And why tool rests do sometimes have to be replaced. I do like robust welds, very hardened piece of steel across here that is kind of a nice feature. Although I like the shape of this one way it pressed awfully well. Let's talk about one other thing too, and that is that to go from here to here, look how far the handle has to move. It has to go like this, and then it has to go way over like this and come back while I roll the gouge. And to do all that takes some practice, and most beginners try to lock this tool against their side and just do this. And that will spell disaster almost instantly. I might be able to zoom in a little here. Yeah. That's pretty sharp, I think. And now watch back here as much as you watch there. But we start, yeah, there. We start right here like this. This is live theater. Look at the handle straight now. And I'm going to start here and come down like that. And you see how that handle is swinging. So the tool really forms an X. So this end of the X goes a lot further than the tip. And for Windsor chair type legs to take a very deep, straight sided probe, you have to bring it all the way dead sideways like this. Go in and then rotate, drop the handle, and come through like that. That has turned out into a really ugly shape, but it's the idea that counts. Now, I also picked out a really hard piece of wood of much bigger diameter to give you a little bit of an idea how different woods work. We did here's a piece of heavy piece of ash, and this isn't going to cut like the other piece cut. And I thought I might do a double-sided square like it's a middle post, just to show you how that would be done. All right, everything whacked down good. I got some speed, the same speed I had before. And I'm going to draw a line here and one here. And we'll make a square shoulder in that direction and a square shoulder in that direction. We'll turn this round, we'll turn that round. We'll make this into a newel post. It's usually got a square here, and mortises are put in two sides of it for the railings. So getting out our skew chisel. My tail starts slipping. I think the head starts slipping. Yep. That's what's wrong. There, that's better. Now I'm going to come down and do this. And you see that it's not cutting like the other one did. I'm using a lot more force. All right, now we can start removing some wood. And you can actually touch the shoulder with the Rocky Knockout if you turn it And we'll put this. There we've got it basically round. It's got a flat spot here. You got to go a little further. And we've cut into the center all the way around. So you're pretty good. Now, generally you want a sort of a curved line about like that on a newel post. You don't bring them to a full round over, generally speaking. So again, we're going to set a distance that we're going to put our second line at, and we're going to cut from there. So probably about a 1/4 inch. We'll do it very nicely. Where did I put my square? There it is. And now I'll simply take a spindle gouge. There we go. I kind of brute force turned this piece. I'd probably go a little easier if I was actually do it a little slower. But at some point, this is like watching ice melt for you. And
Hey, Ernie, I appreciate what you're saying about speed on the spindle turn. Do you find that you might have to crank that up a little bit to get more cut? Or is it the same no matter what?
Nah, I might jump up to a grand on this that I get, especially with my roughing up gouge. I'm up to 12, 1180 here. And I'm getting a little nice top now. Also cutting lighter. It's also much harder wood. This is a piece of ash I got off a construction site, and this stuff was reclaimed wood that came out of big buildings in Cleveland. And I think it's case hardened to hell and go. But you know, it was free, so the price was right.
So
Now,
favorite kind of wood.
yeah, yeah. Now again, you would further undercut this and come up and put a big bead. Some of them are actually balls later on, but in the 18th and early 19th century, they were mostly not spherical. They were really a bead. And there's some rumor that's how lawn balls got their shape, because I think it was King Charles, like the lawn pole, and he cut the top off of a banner, a newel post to get a lawn mower for a game.
Ernie, a
Sure.
month or so ago, when John Kelsey was showing us his spindles, you were telling us about a small groove that's put in to catch the paint.
Yeah, yeah,
What is that called?
yeah, I already put one in here, so it's, in flat work, it's often called a quark. There's lots of planes that'll put a quark bead on the edge of some shape that they cut. And that's true. I would generally go in with a skew and cut and put that. And I'll make a floating cut. Do that. And if I turn this, can you see that very definite groove there?
Right, I see it. Yeah, thank you.
And you see, when you put finish or paint, especially on outdoor architectural turnings where you go put paint on this, it keeps it from filleting that corner and making the detail disappear. Good spindle turning is extremely crisp with, you should be able to take a zero curve saw and cut this apart and restack the elements, and it would mean something, not much, but something. Big fault in this piece of wood all the way up here. All right, any other questions, other things I could show you?
Anybody wants to raise their hand or unmute themselves, please do.
Ernie, you were helpful when you were in Lancaster showing us the SKUs. I really appreciate seeing this again. I want to go downstairs and
Yeah, I've always said that using a skew is a little akin to falconry. On a good day, your falcon will hunt and bring back game for you. On a bad day, he won't get anything and just come back and bite you. And on a really bad day, he won't come back at all. So skews are a little bit like that. They're temperamental, but the more you use them, the more comfortable you get. But again, I do some turning where there's valuable wood involved, or they're very big. I did some last year that were 14 inches in diameter. They really filled up my 24-36 one way over there. And they were Manor style legs for a table. There were two of them. There were four of them. There were two tables. And so when you get up to those big diameters, also forget calipers. You can buy calipers that size, but you'd kill yourself in wood turning if you tried to measure it while it was moving. You're better to buy a simple seamstress tape measure and simply measure the diameter and divide by pi, and it's actually quicker than a set of calipers, and I think more accurate. So anything above about 12 inches of a seamstress tape measure is pretty good trick. And if you're as old as I am and were taught on a slide rule, you can just use the upper scales in which the index is in the middle and pi is at each end. And you can do those measurements really fast as you hone in on it, quicker than a calculator.
Well, gentlemen, appears to be that the time is 5 to 9. Appears that the time is 5 to 9. Matt, do you have any closing remarks?
I'd just like to thank Ernie again, and that's a wonderful presentation, very informative for all of us. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I think